Hello, and welcome to the Movie Universe. I'm your host, Movie Fan. Well, summer's over and it's time to go back to school. So, for my first video in September, I decided to talk about Accepted. Now, Accepted, I'm pretty sure a lot of people are very familiar with. It's a story about a kid who doesn't get accepted into college, and his parents are real disappointed in him. So, he and his friends decide to create a college just to please his parents, only to realize that they did, too good of a job at creating this college because just about every kid in the whole neighborhood had signed up for that made up college. I'll tell you, just hearing that is funny enough as it is, but everything else that goes on is absolutely hilarious. And I don't say that very often about modern comedies. In fact, this is one of the few modern comedies that I actually like. Oh, sure, it does have the stuff that makes a modern comedy. There's a lot of sex jokes and a lot of bad language, but believe it or not, it's actually PG-13. So it's actually dropped to a fine point. Now, I could describe the movie, but there's a good chance that a lot of you have already seen it. And for those of you who haven't, you might actually like this because it is hilarious. Everything that goes on in this movie makes me laugh so hard that I can barely breathe. I'm not kidding. Our main cast of characters, Justin Long and Jonah Hill, are really funny. And the funny thing is, I never saw Jonah Hill as I've seen a few of his films and I really don't think he's funny. But in this film, he is hilarious. Mostly because he's the one who's being hazed at another college. My favorite one being where he's wearing a hot dog costume saying, "Ask me about my wiener." I don't know who wrote that, but that was genius, is what that was. Oh boy. It also features famous comedian Lewis Black, who's actually been in quite a few films, and he's a riot. He plays their made up dean, but he is hilarious because he's constantly saying stuff like how insurance is a real big joke and all kinds of stuff. And of course, the movie does call out some of the big things about college that we can either chuckle at or say, isn't that the truth? For instance, the hazing thing. I mean, that happens a lot, especially with the fraternities. And of course, when Justin Long asks the students, what do they want to get out of college? And most of them were surprised because, usually in college, they tell you what you want to learn, not the other way around. But of course, they do call it the one thing that all guys want out of college to meet some girls. And ain't that the truth? The humor is awesome, but believe it or not, it also gets points for having a moral side to it all. Yeah, it actually has a moral side. Our main character is talking about how, how everyone was rejected because they weren't like those Ivy League students. And not to mention, some of them were actually rejected because they couldn't make up their mind as to what they wanted to be when they grew up. And that ain't right. And he even brought up how college can really just shape you into something that you never wanted to be in the first place. Because he actually talks to the school administration saying, did you always want to be administrators or did you want to be someone else, like a poet or just travel the world or something? Those scenes give you a lot to think about. And believe it or not, everything I've described about this movie really doesn't do it justice. If you haven't seen it, you should. It is hilarious. But keep in mind, if you're like me and you're not real big into modern comedy because it's a lot more raunchy than it used to be with the four-letter words, well, it's there, but it's not that bad. So you can work past it. I know I did. This is Movie Fan signing off.